Okay, it is 8:32 p.m. It is Tuesday, January 12th, 2021, and welcome to week number 2 of Realities in Criminal Justice. And I'm Professor Richard Wright, and so we're going to get right into the material here. Um, but before we get into it again, um, I wanted to comment about things that are going on. Since the last time we were together last Tuesday, all kinds of stuff have happened in our country. I mean, outright insurrection. I mean, just unbelievable what's going on with this. I know that students of mine who've been in constitutional law looking at this is like, wow, it's like overthrowing the government. This is pretty serious, and now the House is primed for issuing articles of impeachment tomorrow for the second time. Never in history has that ever happened before. And then the Senate, even led by different individuals who were allies of the president, now are calling for impeachment. Even Senate leader right now, Mitch McConnell, came out today and said it. So this is a very sad time, and this is not, as I was telling somebody, this whole thing about what's happening with impeachment and the things that are happening is not um, a political issue. No, our country is in danger. It's in danger. Um, Never in my lifetime have I seen anything even close to this. I mean, not in this country anyway, in other countries, but we should never see this. And I'm sure that countries like Russia and China and North Korea, is it North Korea or South Korea where Kim Jong is? But looking at us like, this is unbelievable. North Korea, yeah. Yeah, this is sad. It should grieve all of us. It should bother all of us. I don't care what political party that you're in. Um, we're supposed to be United States of America. Now it's almost like they're trying to create civil war. There was even signs that said 1776, 1776, and actually it's almost like the 1800s with the Civil War. Um, it's sad, and now there are op threats threats against legislators, threats against against the media people and other individuals. Uh, uh, those people who broke in were yelling, "Hang Mike Pence, the vice president," because the president wanted him to do something that he couldn't do. He didn't have the power to do. Um, that's why we have to operate on fact, and that's one of the things that I am very heavy on is fact. Well, being a lawyer all those years, that's the only way that I could go. So we need to continue to um, pray, um, because we have children who are uh, watching this. And at the same time, we got a pandemic that's going off the charts. I mean, man, have you seen California? Have you seen how bad it is out in California? Have you seen that? Yeah, I got family out there, and they are. Let me tell you, there are funeral homes turning people away. Did you hear that? Funeral homes because they don't have enough for the bodies. They're portable morgues. There's not hospital rooms enough. They're using parking lots and places like uh, the parking lots. Can you imagine Walmart or something like that, and them setting up triages? It's almost like a time of war. So we're dealing with this civil unrest. At the same time, we're dealing with this dangerous pandemic. My wife says it's like the end of the world, you know. And but yeah, you are. You are. Yeah, yeah, Florida. Yeah, absolutely. I'm not going to get political about it, but I'm not excited about the way the governor down there is operating with this. It makes it seem as if it's not as bad, and it's really, really, really. I got friends and family down there. Yeah, yeah, he's treating it like a joke as well. But you know what, good people? We got to go back and do what we did this last November. In 2 years, got to go back and do it again. You know what? You got to keep cleaning house until you get people of integrity, people who will be able to operate on the basis of ethical, the things I talk about in my classes, ethics and integrity. We need that in politics like never before, because there's no future for even our children. We look at our kids. I look at my kids. I don't have little kids. My youngest daughter is 12, but I have grandchildren. I have my youngest grandchild is about 4 or 5 months old, and I look at it and I just drop my head, you know. The last thing I'm going to say is this, and I don't know if you watch CNN or not, but I do. I watch CNN because they're very. Somebody said, "Oh, yeah, they're they're very liberal." I said, "No, they're not. They do their research. They bring facts, and that's what I learned when I was in law school, is operate on facts. I learned it before that, but I saw one of the reporters, Sarah Sidner, and I posted it on Facebook, where she was covering what's happening out in California. And she was doing her reporting, her summary, and she just broke down. And she had to apologize 3 or 4 times, but she broke down because the pressure of seeing all of these people suffering, bodies, it's and then the other thing is this, the college has given us some material to pass out to all of our students, and I'll post it in the next day or so and send it to deal with the mental health, because with a combination of being sheltered in place since March of last year, heading on another year, and um, with this taking place, it plays some tricks with this right here, you know. Uh, Depression. There have been suicides. I'm talking about, I know some law enforcement people that have taken their lives. I know some medical people who've seen all of the suffering and taken their lives. It's just, it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. Yeah, 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 yep. And I'm gonna tell you something else, is that I just discovered, and you remember, how the Capitol Police, the Secret Service, and whoever else had to get those legislators out of the chamber because the chamber was being taken over by those people. Well, they had to go in, and there were people who refused to wear masks that were legislators. And there's been at least three um, members of the House who have contracted COVID-19 because of that. Uh, you know, because you could obviously see with that crowd, the way they were, no mask and stuff like that, that they was heading toward it. And then, there were some bad things that happened. people don't realize those people urinated. They left feces all over the place as well in there. I mean, what kind of nonsense is this? You can't help but to cry. And so, I keep, thank God I have a strong um, Christian foundation that can keep me rooted and grounded. Yeah, praying is so important at this time. So each class yesterday I did the same thing, and I'll do the same thing tomorrow. Take time to talk about this with the students, so that you guys can understand that, hey, we're all in this together. This is not a political issue. This is we call it this despotism. I can't even say the word despotism, where it's just ridiculous. Insurrection. Not in this country. I thought that one of the worst things that I would see in my lifetime was in 2001, September the 11th, when I actually was sitting watching television and saw those towers go down. I don't know if some of you guys were little and you didn't see it, but you saw, video of it. But I saw it in real time happening, and how it just threw a loop. Well, guess what? This is the same thing. I was sitting there telling my wife, I said, imagine there were people who were prepared. Let's go like this. You remember the bomb that took place? What was it? Was that Christmas Eve or was that New Year's Eve? What was that? Christmas Eve, right? In Nashville. I think it was Christmas Eve. And that explosion, you saw what that one person did with that one explosion. Could you imagine that if it was something of that magnitude there at the nation's capital? We could have seen the Capitol crumble, which is one of the symbols of our country. Oh, you were in high school? Okay. Yeah, so yeah, everybody was in school that saw it. I was teaching grammar school at that time, you know. But I started thinking. And so now this week, there's been promises of this time, not just violence, but armed violence, you know. So anyway, let's, that's why we need really good uh, criminal justice people as well. So, all right, so let's get right with the topics for the day. Okay, here's my home page there. Okay, let me move this up. Okay, there we go. So let's go down, and where we are here, we're at week two. Week two. And so that leaves us with 4 more lectures, because we have weeks 3, 4, and 5 taking place. And then we have week 6 lecture taking place on a Friday. So there's a recording from week 1 last week. Week 2 will be here after that. Let's go over and let's look at the calendar again. So we are the 12th, and your reading assignment was given here. United States Constitution and the Freedom of Information Act. Your initial post due tonight, 11:59 p.m. Central Standard. Media and trial equality. And then the same thing, the 16th, your reply post. And then your course project. We talked about this last week, and we're going to talk about what you have to do for this week's assignment. And then we're going to deal with the written assignment, State versus Federal Freedom of Information Act. And then, of course, there we go, that's that. And okay, that's the interviewee selection. And then the final part is the live classroom lecture. Okay, the key phrase that I'll be giving you today. So that's where we are, and you'll notice, let's go back over again to very close where we are. The 9th is less than a month, and this course will be over. We end on Tuesday, the 9th. Okay, so basically, if you look at that, we're the 12th. After today, you got 1, 2, 3, 4 Tuesdays, and the course is over. So keep that in mind. You're getting your assignments done. So I encourage you to stay up to date, and especially with that course project. I kind of talked about that quite a bit last week. Let's get at the announcement for this week. The First Amendment rights. Prepare for the assignment. You to read U.S. Look at, not to read the whole U.S. Constitution, but the U.S. Constitution we deal with, specifically the First Amendment, and complete the activity criminal justice and the First Amendment. We'll talk about that. And then the discussion posts, as I said, media and trial equality, initial post again due tonight, Saturday, 11:59 p.m. Central Standard, the reply post. Written assignment, State versus Federal Information and Disclosure Acts, and the course project, which is the interviewee selection, due also. And then, of course, my motto over here, adversity is a springboard to success, and you know what that's all about. Again, there's that video there for you that I sent you, and is there as well. So always encourage students to look at the announcements so you understand what the assignments are. So let's get right into the module. Let's go right at the assignments. So you could see that the written assignment is State versus Freedom of Information Act. Now, you should be aware that FOIA, Freedom of Information Act, is a federal statute, and it deals with rights that you have to information about yourself. That's also how the media obtains much of the material that they get to publish, to put on the news. And then almost every state that I know of has their own version of it. And it's called either the Public Information Disclosure Act. But the point of the matter is that you need to be aware of this. And I'm going to talk about that tonight in the context of yours truly. And so in the paper, you're going to deal with the overview of your state's Public Information Disclosure Act, an explanation of at least 3 differences in the state protection versus the federal, and a minimum of 3 differences between your state's Disclosure Act and the Freedom of Information Act. Identify the differences, which differences are important to an individual's privacy. Then, of course, you know it is a 1 to 2 page paper. Make sure you run your papers through Grammarly. It's APA, by the way. You should already know that, though. And there should be a cover page. There should be a separate reference page. And there should be citations throughout the paper, not just a citation, and it should be in Word document. And then let's look at the rubric. Here it is right here, and you can see the rubric, and it tells you what 80% of the paper, your grade, is dealing with the issues that I laid out just a few minutes ago. And then the formalities, making sure it meets the, by the way, one page means one page, not 3/4 of a page. And, you know, with your margins properly done, with your font properly done, you should be able to do this by now. And then again, your APA information as well for a total of 100 points. Okay, any questions about the state versus federal Information Disclosure Acts at this point? Okay, I'm going to talk about that again in a few minutes. All right, so that's the written assignment, number one. Number two, you have your discussion posts, media and trial equality. And the thing is that juries are selected oftentimes, and it's based upon the lawyers, the judge using a thing called voir dire, which means to seek the truth, where you question potential jurors about their biases and you learn things about them. And so the goal is to select a jury of the peers that would be fair and impartial. So the question here is, though, what effect does the media coverage have in terms of impacting potential jurors? And so you're going to deal with the questions. Is it fair that the media can publicize information about the accused prior to a fair trial? Remember, you got First Amendment rights that the media has in terms of being able to do so. And you also have to pair that with the individual's right to a fair trial. But there needs to be a balance between the two. And that is why oftentimes information that the media releases is not made known to jurors after they are selected for high profile trials, because they're sequestered to keep them away from the news media after the trial starts. Should opinions of the accused be saved for the end of the trial, so the accused has a fair and impartial trial? Again, the whole point of the issue is the public has a right to be aware of what's going on as well. So, because many people, you know, are out on bail while they're awaiting trial as well. So it's a question between the constitutional rights of the media and the individual rights to a fair trial. So again, you're going to do your initial post tonight and your reply post on Saturday. And then your course 2 course project, where we talked about last week, dealing with interviews. And remember, I said you're going to have 2 separate individuals. The first interview will be with the public information officer for a law enforcement agency, newspaper reporter, or something that works for an agency. And the second will be a news reporter from a local news station. And it could be television, it could be radio, it could be internet, and those kinds of things. And this tells you about finding the news reporter. Now, the optimal way is to do a face-to-face interview, but with the pandemic, we do have some issues. You could talk by phone with someone. You could do it Skype. You could do it Zoom. You could do it other ways. The key thing is to be able to do this. It's rather difficult to do it by texting because as you already know, texting back and forth, you lose a lot of information. So you need to be able to take the time to interview these individuals. And it says, while many smaller news outlets will do some crime reporting, you may do better if you consider talking with some from an organization that is large enough to have at least one person dedicated to reporting on the criminal justice system. So locating the public information officer, usually that's a person that you might see on the news that speaks for the law enforcement agency, the sheriff's office, the police department, or you might even find there's some agencies called in Illinois. We have I'm trying to tell you the name of the organization, but they deal with crime and they investigate that. So set up an interview and locate those interviews as soon as possible. So now tonight, I'm going to tell you what you need to do. All right. So this week, this is what you're going to submit to me. The news reporter selection, provide the name, the company, the address, phone number, and email address. You could even do more than one, so you could have a backup as well. I suggested this to students as well. The public information officer provide the name, the company, the address, the phone number, and email address. So remember, for each one, you got to provide the name of the party, the company, the address, as much as you can. And you can usually get the address, not their personal address, of course, you know, where they work at, the phone number, then it could be their cell phone number if they want to give it, or either you can use the phone number for the organization, and then of course the email address for the organization as well that they use, because a lot of people have organizations, just like I have one for Rasmussen, and I have my own personal, these companies that work for various organizations, law enforcement or media, have their own email addresses to use. So you're going to write a one-page summary, not of each one, but one-page summary of the interviews that you plan, and include how the interviews will be conducted, in person or phone. Let me know the method that you're going to use and the possible dates that you have established for the interviews. It is so important that you get that lined up, because time will move, and I can tell you, inevitably, there are students who come back to me and say, right at week 5, I still haven't heard from you. Don't sit and wait. That's why I said try to have more than one. And of course, though, your paper should be proofread for spelling, grammar, and so forth. Now, I'm not going to be so deaf on this with APA requirements, citations, and references, but I'm going to be more looking for the information. Here's the rubric. Here's the rubric for it. And it tells you right here, you get 40 points for providing the name, the company address, and phone number, and email address of the public information officer. You get 40 points for the same for the newspaper reporter. Now, let me tell you this. Your newspaper reporter can be also a news reporter on TV or radio. Make sure you get that through as well. And then it's going to contain a one-page outline of the interview plan, how the interviews will be conducted, person, phone, and the dates set. That's how you get 115 of your 125 points. and then 5 points for, and don't worry about the 2-page minimum requirement length. All right, that's okay. Don't worry so much about it. I'm not even going to really worry about that. You don't have to do 2 pages. That was put in there, and I would take it out, but they don't want me to take it out. I'll just leave it there, but don't worry, I will not hold that against you. And then, of course, it says APA. Like I said again, do have a title page. If you do have some references you want to put in there and so forth. But I'm going to be more concerned with this part up here, making sure you get that information in here. Okay, but make sure it's spelled correctly and stuff like that. Okay. Any questions about that? Okay. So that's the assignments for this week, except one more, and then you know what that is. That's the live classroom lecture phrase. Okay, so now let's talk about the module. Let's operate on the basis of what we talk about: criminal justice and the First Amendment. And we're going to talk about the Freedom of Information Act. So be aware of the fact that the First Amendment of the Constitution deals with the freedom of religion, press, and expression, and that there can be no laws to abridge the freedom of speech or press. And so the key thing is that the public is entitled to the information. And so the public relies on the press or the media, whether it's radio or television, or either written, to provide information concerning what is going on with individuals. And so then we have the FOIA, which came about in 1966, and the media is able to report on to the public about what's going on. And so they could also get police reports. But usually when police reports are received, they're redacted, which means there may be some critical information like essential, like maybe some names or addresses that may be covered up. The main parties might be in there, but there might be some witnesses and stuff like that that is redacted. And so the Freedom of Information allows the media to get that information, as I said earlier, to share with you. And it says here, elements of the criminal act are presented and debated at trial in an effort to find the accused guilty or innocent, while the facts are based on the laws for the state, but sometimes it is misrepresented by the media, so there needs to be responsible media. As you and I both know, that false information can lead to some bad situations like the one we're having in our political system right now. And so the media has to be responsible in terms of giving information. They have a duty. As a matter of fact, they have a code of conduct that they operate under in terms of information, that they make sure that they check their sources. And, you know, one of the problems, though, that happens, unfortunately, is that there are times when the media wants to try to get the story out first and be the first one to release it, you know. And so there can be some mistakes made in those kind of scenarios. It is better to be later with the information and to have the facts than to have to do what we call retractions. which I hate retractions, particularly written ones. If you ever know anything about the way that you would see something on the headlines about something or somebody, and then when it's retracted, it's further back in the paper or the magazine or wherever, and people don't see it because sometimes people are so concerned with focusing on the sensationalism that they overlook the facts. And so it is important for the media to be responsible in providing information that is as truthful as possible, not to run with the first thing that they gather. And oftentimes you'll hear reporters say their sources, and that's because of the fact that they have to sometimes protect the parties who give them the information. And there are rare occasions where there are no sources and people just make up stuff and say they're sources, but very responsible media will not be guilty of that. Okay, so that brings us to the what the Constitution does. It grants protection against persecution under a dictatorship. Don't we know that? Thank God for that. Thereby guaranteeing a government that would give its citizen a due process and equal protection under the law. That's what's so important. And so what has happened is that states and the federal government have enacted laws to protect the privacy of individuals. And so there is a balance between how much private information that is allowed to be released. It says here many people would not want the public to know they were victims of a crime, even if they know or even know if they were the suspects. However, be aware of the fact that depends. That's why, for example, in rape cases, for example, sometimes the names of parties are redacted, especially when there are minors involved, and minors are protected under our system. And so, as we also know, that our system says you are innocent until proven guilty. And unfortunately, sometimes the media coverage takes it that it puts on that individual the problematic position of proving that they are not guilty. And you shouldn't have to do that. The burden of proving whether or not you're guilty of a crime is for the prosecution, and the defense will represent that individual to try to establish that they're not guilty. And that's why our standard of proof in the criminal courts is beyond a reasonable doubt. And what does that mean? That means if you have any scintilla of a possibility that the person did not do it, you shouldn't find the person guilty. That's the way it's supposed to be. But sometimes media information can tamper with that. The question here is, do high-profile defendants have less of a right to privacy than the general public and the public's right to know? And so the key thing is, as I said earlier, is whether or not you're high profile or low profile, you still, under the Constitution, have a right to a fair trial. And the law should protect each of those in an equal fashion. Now, I want to talk about the Freedom of Information Act for a minute here, because of the fact that you should be aware that when the Freedom of Information Act came about in 1966, it opened up the opportunity for people to receive things that they learn about themselves. Let me give you an example of what I'm talking about. And this is not a criminal issue, but here's what happened to me. When I graduated from high school in 1969, um, this was before when I asked for a transcript of my grades. Well, it turns out that there was some information that was in my file that was not me. And I'll tell you what happened. We had, okay, my name was Richard. Uh, my name at that time, this is before I was adopted, Richard Howard Wright, or Richard H. Wright. And my, at my address where I lived while I was in high school, we had a family that my aunt let come to stay with us for a while who had problems. And the name of the family was also Wright, though my aunt's name was Collins, but I maintained Wright because I talked about this before in my story, how I kept my dad's last name of Wright. Well, anyway, the young man, there were several kids, but one of the young men he was actually a year in front of me in high school. Well, his name was Amos Richard Wright. His address was our address. Of course, we had different social security numbers, but our numbers were so close in the way the numbers. So what happened is that when I got the file, it showed that I had a lot of D's and F's. And I said, whoa, this, I didn't even take these classes. And this is not me. So anyway, they said, well, that's just the way it is. So I filed a FOIA. Someone helped me out to file a FOIA request, Freedom of Information Act, from the Chicago Public Schools. And I was able to get the information. And as a result of that, my file was cleared up. And it had, we separated them, and then I was able to go on and get into college. But the point of the matter is because of the Freedom of Information Act, I was able to get information that I would not have ordinarily been able to get. Keep in mind that it had just been enacted in '66. I graduated in '69. And so it was used there. I'll tell you another instance where I used the Freedom of Information Act. When I was in law school and I was involved in protests, I was the head of what they call the Black American Law Student Association in Illinois, the Midwest Regional Director. So I had the Midwest states over me. And we did a few marches. They weren't violent marches, by the way. They were peaceable protests. And then there were press conferences held, and I was one of the key speakers at the press conferences. In fact, I have a newspaper article showing me in one of them that's been posted on Facebook on my page several times. But here's what happened. I found out that when we were getting ready to deal with the bar and they would deal with character and fitness and background, that I was in what they call COINTELPRO. COINTELPRO was an investigation that the Federal Bureau of Investigation had against civil rights people. Jesse Jackson was in there. Martin Luther King was in there. There were some Panthers in there. There were some other individuals that I don't remember off the top of my head. But anyway, I was able to get my file expunged and corrected using the Freedom of Information Act, because there was some stuff in there that was not correct about me, and they were tying me to the wrong groups. And so so the Freedom of Information Act can be used other than in criminal cases. to get information. But be aware that again, every state has its own Freedom of Information Act, and if you click on this, here's a spreadsheet, and I'm going to see if I can open it up here and show it to you, share it to you. Let's see if I can open it here. Sometimes it opens, sometimes it doesn't. Okay, let me try again. Open the file. Okay, here we go. Excuse me. Can you see this? Can you see it, Sarah? Can you see this spreadsheet that I have here? Yeah, well, it's small on your phone. Yeah, okay. So anyway, you could go and look at it on your computer, but it tells what various states, and it goes all the way through, and it tells you where you can find um, the various Freedom of Information Act and how it works in your jurisdiction. So that little spreadsheet is right there for you. Okay, let me close that off. Okay, so you can take a look at that on a computer, and you'll be able to see it, and it tells you what statutes, or you can check your own statute in the state. So there are key things that are involved with the Freedom of Information Act that involve, as I talked about, the uh, First Amendment, and that's what the First Amendment says. Then there's the Freedom of Information Act, and it explains what the Freedom of Information Act, and it tells you where you can find more information, www.foia.gov, and you could find information about how the Freedom of Information Act operates and how to use it properly. And then Watergate, the scandal that brought down Richard Nixon. This was the big scandal that happened in the presidency that resulted in the near impeachment of Richard Nixon, but he resigned and it didn't happen. And so it talks about, it says that the House Judiciary Committee voted to accept 3 of 4 proposed articles of impeachment, with some Republicans voting with Democrats to recommend impeachment. So it would then go to the Senate for trial, like the one that we're dealing with right now. But it never made it that far because the president resigned. Okay. And you can go down and you can learn more about that if you take this on down. There we go. And this is the speech that I saw in 1974 that was delivered when the president resigned. And I saw a speech where he talked about and decided he would resign. So it explains how the Freedom of Information Act, First Amendment, and how dealing with scandals. So there are a number of scandals. The Freedom of Information Act allows the media to present information based on public record, as they're doing now here, excuse me, with the articles of impeachment that are being reported, that you can Google actually and get copies of the complete articles of impeachment. And it talks about the release of information can sometimes be, as they say, detrimental. Now, here is an article that was written before I came to law school, The Watergate Scandal by J.R. Waltz, 1974. J.R. Waltz was John, Jon, R. Waltz. Professor Waltz was one of my professors. That's one of the good things about going to Northwestern. I had top professors. He was my professor in civil procedure. And we had discussions about this after after I started law school there. And so about juries and the mass media. And so it dealt with helping with the Watergate investigation, and it told about things that took place. And notice one of the things it talks about here. See, look at this. The stolen documents included information about the FBI's secret counterintelligence program, COINTELPRO. Did you just hear me talking about that? It was still going on when I was coming out of law school, which was 4 years later. Uh, and it said this was a huge concession United States and President Nixon, because this was unveiled by a news reporter who found out about the existence of those COINTELPRO documents, just like I found about the existence of mine. And so these are different things that you should be aware of. But yeah, the Watergate scandal was one of the all-time instances where the law was used to sometimes catch people, but was also used to mischaracterize people, as I was saying about myself. Any questions about any of these things that we've talked about today? Any? Okay. What you have a question? Okay. What's your question? Do you want me to open up? Let me see if I can open up your mic for you. You have, okay. Go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. The only thing, it's going back to the course project. I'm kind of, I guess, I don't really know the word, worried about being able to find interviewees. Do you have like any kind of tips or like
Well,
other than
what?
Googling?
Yeah, yeah. That's what I was telling you. I said you have to. The best way is to try to reach out to people. Okay, like different departments. Your departments, your law enforcement, federal, your state, county, city, municipal, for the police officer, and that's usually someone who speaks on behalf of the police. Oftentimes, you in your area have seen statements, and you might see the same person making statements on about cases that are involved. And I would reach out to that department and arrange to talk to that individual about it.
Okay, I guess like, so I think the public information officer, I should be able to get through if I go through my local police department, right?
You could probably do that. And the same thing you can do with the newspaper. You have media people, you have local newspaper people, community newspapers. It doesn't have to be the city newspaper. We have like local newspapers that deal with individuals who are reporters on crime and stuff like that.
Okay. Yeah, I know I'm right here next to Pasco County too, where they used to film cops.
Oh, okay,
So
okay,
I'm sure
okay.
there's plenty. I know I'm overthinking it. It just sounds a little intimidating.
Well, no, you gotta get it. You gotta just do it. That's all. And you can't wait. You gotta, like I
Yeah.
said again, tell them what you need to do. Tell them that you're in a class and you want to set up an interview with them, and you're going to when you set up the interview, the next assignment that you're going to have is preparing questions that you want to ask them. So you'll
Right.
have your questions before you go to see them. What you're really trying to do is make sure you get the person or persons that would be available, and let them know that it's time sensitive and that you got to have this done um, within a certain period of time. But so so your newspaper people or your media people should be pretty easy to get to. You can even deal with a local TV station, a local radio station.
Okay. Yeah, I guess, like I said, I guess I'm just overthinking it. I'm just like, they
Yeah,
seem impossible to get a hold of.
yeah, they're there. They're there. They're there. You just have to ask them. That's all.
Okay. Yeah, I guess I would kind of want to have my questions and all prepared at the time that I ask them. That way, if they're like, let's do this tomorrow, I'm ready.
Well, you can, but remember this week, what you got to do, you got to tell me the schedule that you're going to do it with. I don't think you can have those questions done right then and there. You're putting too much on you. Your first thing is to find the people
Yeah.
and then be able to set the time that you guys and tell them you'll probably only need no more than maybe 45 minutes at the most. That's the most that you'll need. You shouldn't
Okay.
need any more than that
Okay.
with of their time.
Right.
And if let them know that, and then let them know that you're a student in criminal justice and that this is a project for your class that you're in.
Okay. Thanks. That's really helpful.
Okay. All right. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. You have the answers before you know it.
Yeah, I better snap out of it if I'm going to go to law school.
Yeah, well, yeah, you better be ready for that. Yeah, because you're gonna have to you're gonna have challenges ahead of you that are way more than preparing something like this. See, I have an advantage over everybody because um, my adopted mother was in TV and radio. So I knew
Oh,
media people, and I did radio myself. As you know, I did some TV, so I know a whole lot. I know people on major networks.
well, I'll just
I mean,
interview you.
huh?
I said, I'll just interview you.
No, that wouldn't work because I didn't work in the areas, but I could interview them, and then police officers. Almost all of us know a police officer, but you got to remember the police officer may not be the person. There's a person designated as utilized to speak because you know why they don't just use any police officer because the fact that they don't want the integrity. There are people whose job there's an organization called the Better Government Association, uh, BGA, and a guy that used to be a news reporter on Channel 7 or ABC locally here in Chicago. He is the person for that organization who speaks. There is the Chicago Crime Commission, and the guy that's over that used to be a beat reporter for television in here in Chicago as well. So if I had to do those assignments, it would be a piece of cake for me. But that's because I'm in the mix. But I tell students it's easier than you think, and you don't always have to have the major networks. You don't have to get the CNNs, the Foxes, the
Good.
those kind of things. You don't have to get the ABCs, CBS, NBCs, and sometimes you can. I know a bunch of people on all channels in Chicago, all channels. So, they're here. I had a student here who asked me, that was here in Illinois and Chicago, who had this assignment, and I gave them one of my friends, and he was an NBC reporter, and he said, "Yeah, send her on." And then I knew a good uh, crime reporter who took care of it. But that's because it was here. Okay. I don't know anybody in Florida in that area. Okay. So, okay.
Okay, sounds good.
All right. So you're doing the lecture today on your phone, huh?
Yeah, I have my computer, but I don't have a microphone on it, so that's why I go ahead and do it on my phone in case I need to
So
speak.
you use your app from WebEx then on there, right?
Yeah,
Some students don't know about that app. That app is very valuable,
yeah,
very important. I've had to use it a couple of times, but I can't. It's hard for me to lecture because I can't get all the information I want on that little screen. So
yeah.
that's the issue with that. Okay. So, do you have any other questions for me?
Not right now.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm going to give you a key, and the key is Freedom of Information Act. That whole thing. It's not a lot. Freedom of Information Act. That's what, and don't give me the letters, FOIA. Write it out. That's what you got to do to get your points for this week. Okay,
All right, thank you.
you're welcome. So I will return next week at, we should say, same bat time, same bat channel. Okay, 8:30 p.m. Central Standard Time. You guys be safe. And again, remember I said, take care of yourself. Um, do what you need to do for this, protect yourself in this pandemic, and then your mental state with all the other things that we talked about that are going on right now. And I will see you next week. Thank you for coming out tonight, and get those assignments done and keep moving forward. All right, so see you next week.